Hi, welcome back to Sharon from Vivid Days. I have a day off work, so I am in my art studio and creating. And I wanted to just say thank you. There are so many people that are really enjoying my ocean scenes, especially a video that I did for my soon-to-be, hopefully, Neil, mother-in-law. And what that video means to me, it was a gift to her, to connect with her from her past, and I put in there bits of the beaches from a memorable place for her in Shells. I showed you my process. It's just got over 100,000 views and I'm just eternally grateful, so thank you. And I've had so many requests for that piece to show you this process but slow it down. So this video is designed for people that are fairly new to resin or have never used this process before, so it will be a longer video. I say no apologies because you wanted to see it, so by popular demand I'm going to give you a breakdown. Now with resin you're never going to get like for like, you just can't, because resin is fluid, it's going to do what it wants, you want to work with it, but the concept and the feel of how I orchestrated this video or this piece for Margaret is going to be what I'm going to take you through now. So I will do my best to make sure I slow it down, I talk out loud, and you get to see the process. Now a lot of questions I get asked is, how long do you wait between each layers? Well, it depends on what you're using, temperatures and everything, so check your manufacturer's instructions. If I am doing acrylics, which I will be doing, I don't put any resin on there until it's dry to touch, and then I don't add anything to the resin as far as the second layer or any embellishments until that is also dry to touch. Now on the one I'm working with today, or should I say through this processing, it's resin 8 and that takes 12 hours for that to cure. So a lot of it will be day after day that I'll be working on this. But today, if I'm lucky, I will show you the preparation, I will put the acrylics on it, and I will probably put my first layer of resin. And then hopefully in 24-48 hours it'll be that next layer of resin, and hopefully that should be that piece finished. But come with me on this journey. I'll do my best to talk out loud. If you do like this process, thumbs up, subscribe, comments are always welcome. And if you've got any other questions, please do check my description, which is underneath the video in that little triangle. I do my best to list all the products I'm using. And also if you would like to tip or donate to my channel, that would be greatly appreciated. Again, my information for my PayPal is in my description. Thank you so much. Have an amazing day, and I hope you enjoy this video. See you on the next one. Hi, welcome back to Sharon from Vivid Days. The most common question I got asked on the other piece is, why did I put a wooden frame on it, or where did I get the board from? So I am really big on trying to keep my art cost effective, especially if it's going to be for me. I don't make a lot of money from my art. It is a hobby, but it is something that I enjoy doing. I do sell some of my work, but I'm really trying to recycle where possible and show people ideas for keeping art more cost effective. So this particular board, I go to a local shop that sells really nice furniture and pieces and things to make your home feel warmth and love, but at affordable prices. So this one was from one that we call the Range. So it's just something that was designed to be cheap, to be stuck on somebody's wall. So it says some word on there, your opinion isn't in the recipe. Quite like that's quite funny. And it is one that is just got MDF at the back. It's already got some hanging things. So the thing to be mindful of when recycling this board is resin escaping from here. Any of the wording that's on there, making sure that it is not going to be popping through. And also just making sure that it's protected at the back. So the first thing I am going to do, which is what I recommend, is you tape off the back area here. That's for two things. One, it will keep your back area clean because resin will drip underneath. Maybe not as much as normal ones because it does have the sides of the canvas, but if there is any leakage you want to prevent it coming out so far. So that's the first thing I'm going to do, and I use masking tape. You can use masking tape or whatever you've got, because with this one it's not about the resin drip because I have this part here to protect it. It is for my hands underneath when I'm handling it, but also to stop anything leaking out here. So firstly we will get on with this process. Now I tend to double this one because if there are holes, resin will try and find a way out, and what we've got to do is plug that hole and stop that resin getting out of here. You could, if you want, look at taking off those hanging clips. I never, for my other piece, there were no issue because where I'm going to level the board, it's not going to be facing onto that. The most important thing for me in this piece is stopping any resin escaping through these holes. Another thing you might want to consider at this stage is, do you want to paint the actual frame? Now I don't. I went for an organic look myself because I think the colour of the brown to me represented a little bit of the sand area or the rock area, but that's a personal choice. I'm not telling you what colour schemes to have. I am just sharing with you my process. And I don't know why I'm trying to talk in a rhythmic. I think it's because I'm so tired today for some reason. Not ill, just tired. And my brain really is not computing, so I'm finding that if I'm talking slower, I'm more in control of what is coming out of my mouth. So this frame itself only cost me, I think it was £3.99. So I encourage you to go into recycle shops, waste shops, shops that sell furniture that might be selling off bits. You can keep it quite cost effective, and you've just got to think with a filter of how can you use it in your art, and will it give you more back and add value? Can you make it into something better? And that's the what I do. I think I talked to Tammy about this once, Tammy Anderson, that we just go shopping looking for possibilities. So look for mass production things that they're selling cheap and that you might be able to adapt for your artwork. I won't be offended for people that skip through the bits that are not relevant for them. I understand that there's going to be a mixture of people watching this. Some people may have never worked with resin before, so it's very important that I take this time to show them the process. As we do start applying resin, we can start looking for leakages or any problems. Last time I got a tiny little bit in one corner that came out, and the rest held really well, so I was very happy with that. I think I'm going to go one more with this because there's a slightly bigger gap at one corner than the other, but when I look at the inside, it does look like it's all tacked together. Apologise if my face gets in the screen. But I need to be able to keep it in shot for you as well as being able to work. Oh, I'm rambling. Oh, I said rambling, not digressing. I wonder if that means I'm growing as a person. What do you think? All right. Alright, so that's enough of the back side area. A thing you need to take into consideration is your working area and level. I'm just looking to make sure there's no obvious massive gaps down there, which there isn't. I am going to make sure though that I give this a quick wipe over to make sure there's no dust in there. This one's been waiting a little bit to use. And what I will show you as well is the colours that I am going to use to paint. So this is where it's an optional extra. You do not have to do this. Other people just apply resin directly onto this. The only thing I would say, because it has got wording, you will have to block this out. So I am slowly, as I'm talking, because I'm trying to multitask, is pulling you out my preferred colours to use within my oceans for the type of ocean I'm creating here. You can use whatever colour you want and you connect to. So I'm just going to check. So I tend to use the Peebo. So I've got my blue-green, my tortoise, and then I need my green-blue. So that's green-blue, and this one is blue-green. And I believe that is it. I will need my Casting Craft white, but I won't need it at this part. These are acrylic paints. So let me see. Let me check you can see them. Yes. So I will need to get my white out. So my trusted colours that I prefer to use are the Dalla and Rowney. The first one is the ultramarine. I really like to engage in a little bit of that dark blue, which represents the trick on the mind, showing you that the ocean's far away. And then I start phasing it through to my Dalla and Rowney, which is cerulean blue. And I then blend in my Peebo. So this one is a blue-green. No, that one's a green-blue, blue-green. Told you, my brain's not commuting today. And a turquoise. So sometimes I do it where I am phasing through to dark blue, light blue, green, and then blues. And sometimes I mix it up. So what you're going to do is see me using these. I'll outline it just with a touch of white acrylic. This one's called Crafts for All. It's just one I had in there from a paint set. But when I do come through to mix my resin, I use the same colour schemes here, as well as I do with my casting craft. That's where I add the foam with. Now, some things for you to take into consideration if you choose to follow me and use acrylic in your resin. Please remember that resin hates water. Acrylic is water-based. So the way that I found that I get the best use out of these and stop any chemical reaction or any wasted resin, because if you add too much of this, it can go marshmallowy, thicken up, heat up dramatically quick, set and cure within minutes, or smoulder and set fire. So it is something you have to take into consideration. Now for me, what I've found is if I just apply a little pea-size ball of acrylic into my resin, mix it and apply it straight on the board, I've not had any like reactions to that, so that works for me. And again, I really do like these colours, so I paint it with acrylic and then add it to my resin because I believe that adds depth. Some people have said that when they've tried applying acrylic themselves, they're getting it heating up and going marshmallowing, and I don't really know the reason why, other than try a different brand, because certain brands may make a difference, and if it is too much water-based or it's a cheaper brand, you might find that you'll have a chemical reaction. And I would say at this stage, what you're thinking about is your composition for you. Now, as I'm doing this, you might not want your oceans to look like this. So it's really important that you start to map out how do you want it to look. Now, you have to be careful when you're applying your paint, just to make sure you're not going to get any splashes up here. And if you are going to paint your sides, this is the time where you're going to do it. But I'm Sharon, I'm digressing. I'm going to go and get my brushes and just give this a wipe down. And what I'm going to do is, in my mind's eye, start to think where I want. Now, I'm thinking this time I might have my beach line more this way. The other one, it was coming in, it was lapping over. And just to make it a little bit different, I'm feeling that there might be a little bit of the pebbles and the beach line here. So I'm going to have to bring my beach up to here, which might sound strange, but you have to think 2 steps ahead or 3 steps ahead. That as I gradient my dark blue and light blue and it starts to lap over here, it will encroach back on the beach because I want some of that darkness underneath there. Which reminds me, I forgot my beach paint. Woo! Brain's really not working. So for me, when I'm working on my beach, again, it's a preference. It depends what you connect to. And the beach doesn't have to be perfect because I am going to come in with real sand and pebbles. But I tend to use, again, the Peebo, which is the ivy, which is going to be the lighter part of the sand. I always add a tiny little bit of burnt umber. Now, that might sound dramatic, but I prefer that at the parts where the ocean is lapping onto the beach to help with that mind's illusion of a 3D or lapping, or the fact that the sand's wet. But I bring in a slightly warm colour, which is the ochre. And that just blends through with both these colours and adds a little bit of that orange or richness to the sand, if that's how you connect with your beaches. So again, I'm just giving you suggestions of the colours I use. Feel free to use whatever you feel. Some people are creative, they might use black, they might use purple, whatever you want to do. But it's important that try not to panic about creating a beach or an ocean scene. Think about a feeling. When I paint, I imagine I am walking down the beach, or I connect with that feeling. and I just drift off to a feeling and an emotion as opposed to what I'm trying to draw. Now that might seem strange for some people, but one thing I have learned, if you try and draw something, you might start panicking about it and put too much pressure on yourself, whereas if you can connect with a feeling, it's not about being a perfect drawing, it's about that emotion you can capture in that. Anyway, that's Sharon's hot tip. I'm digressing. Let me go get something to wipe this down and let's start brushing. I tend to use Johnson's baby oils for me, just a light dusting. Now this one, because it's an MDF and it's quite rough, it is capturing onto it, so you need to make sure you're not going to leave any dust or bits of cloth. So I'm just giving it a light dusting because I know that the you can hear it scrape, 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 but look at that dirt coming off. You know that the paint itself will also pick up some things. It's only so dirty because I've had it in my studio a little while waiting for this project, probably about 5 months. You might want to just use like a linen cloth. Alright, that's the obvious dirt gone. And my brushes and shoreline. So for me, sometimes I paint the ocean first and sometimes I paint the shoreline first. There's no rhyme or reason or right or wrong. It's really going to be about what are you going to enjoy doing most first. And for me, this is going to be the shoreline. So I tend to have a few different brush sizes nearby. Just whatever you're comfortable with. The more detailed ones will come when I'm just trying to get that fine bit of the sand that's going under the water. The rest of it, in theory, you're just slapping it on. Sometimes you might need 2 coats. Sometimes you might need 1 coat. Now I do take a bit of time to make sure I get my blending right, because of these pigments I keep them a bit more translucent or transparent so that you can see the depth as I add layers of the waves crashing underneath. So for me it's important that I do the base correctly. If you don't want to do this, you might want to just add your resin directly to it and see how you go. But I would love to hear how you do it and what you find. So I think I am going to paint my shoreline first. So I'm going to use the brown. You can put the, oh, see all that dust just come out there. Get rid of that. Now you might want to put it onto a plate. Me, I tend to find I like to apply it directly to my board. One, is it laziness? Not too sure. I think it's more just that I don't see the need to do that. So as I start to do this, I'll start to work out if I feel I've got it in the right area. Nothing is smooth really by the ocean line, so you might want to move it around a little bit. But it is important that I think about part of the piece that was successful before was the amount of pebbles and stones that was in there. So I might actually bring it out a little bit more. But the resin itself is going to go where it needs to go. With acrylics you do have to work quite quickly as they start to dry, especially as it's here. I'm sure you all know that. But as soon as you add a little bit of water, which is what I forgot to bring out, that's definitely quite dark there, and it is seeping into this MDF, so it's a thirsty board. Now that's not an issue by itself, and that's actually going to help the resin, because if you apply resin directly to anything wooden that's not been treated or primed, it's just going to create so many micro bubbles. So the more you can do to protect it. So part of why I like to do this acrylic layer for me is it's also doing another thing, which is feeding your board. Don't stress too much, it will all come together, I assure you. And then I'll keep working on it until I get it right. You don't realise until it all comes together at the end the importance of this darker part here. covered it up anyway, so. Oh, I swear that was the paint, not me. I've got so much paint on the side there. I will get that off before I add the resin. I'm telling you to take it steady and I'm just slapping it off. And this is where the magic happens, where you start bringing your strokes through and gradiating. I might take my bangle off because I think it's going to annoy you all. You can hear that rattling and rolling. I see some obvious things where I've got, yeah, but I've got alcohol wipes, so I'll come back and sort that out. Nothing there, but there is something there. Wow, I am a messy worker today. So I apologise for that. I received a phone call from my wonderful Neil, and there's not a problem with doing that, but it stops my video recording. So the only thing I have done is blended through here, and I'm not too stressed about this being perfect because I'm going to put sand on here and stones. It's really just to map out where I know my colour schemes are going to be more than anything. So what I will do now is work my way backwards, I believe. So I'm going to add my turquoise. See how transparent that is to start with. So probably need a couple of layers to cover this right up. Directly on here. The white might not stay there once the resin's on. Again, it's just to help my mind, and the white does actually thicken up this Peebo, so it's not as transparent. I have to remember that I'm not going for a far away ocean scene. Otherwise my perspective of the stones will be alright. But again, I'm not necessarily going for realism to scale or perfection, but I am wanting it to at least help you connect with that shoreline. Okay, so I am going to keep coming in with some baby wipes to make sure I keep, while the acrylic is wet, wiping off the bits that are touching the wooden frame. It's not a great deal because I have already done that, so it's just a little bit blue there. And the resin will come up a bit anyway, so let's go. So I use my turquoise, now I'm going to come with my blue green. You might think that this is very similar to the one I've put down, and I suppose the tones are. This one's got like a little metallic shimmer, but it's got a little bit of that green that's coming through. So it just adds, it's not as milky as the turquoise. Probably not going to need too much of the dark colours if I'm being honest, because this is going to be quite near. And again, by adding this acrylic, it's sealing the bottoms and the sides. A little bit of the green. Got a tinge of blue in here, but you should see more of the green coming out. Something beautiful about this one when it's added to the resin. Blend the tones through. And my ultramarine blue. Not too worried about it creeping up a little bit because the resin's going to cover that anyway. I'm just flattening that out and blending that through. And it definitely needs a second coat because you can see the writing, so I just need to let this dry and then come back through with a second coat. So I'll probably see you in about an hour. My time. Immediately now, like a magic, your time. So I am going to come in with hopefully my final coat of acrylic, because this is not about perfection, it's just about the underneath and trying to cover this wording up. So the sand area I'm quite okay with. I think by the time I add the stones and the pebbles, that'll take care of itself. You can see where it's losing its grain, but then again I might need to do it just to help with the resin, but I'll see where I feel like. This time I'm going to start from the other way and work my way back just because I can. Now this part I might speed it up for you just to save you some time. It's just a repeat of what I did before. Alright, so I'm happy that there is no wording coming through here. Again, this picture doesn't have to be perfect, it's just your base. So here has had 2 coats, that's to cover up the wording. I've checked my edges are fairly okay because it is going to rise up a little bit with resin anyway. And then here is where I'll bring in the pebbles and the real stand. So I need to leave this to cure again and dry, and then you'll come and see me start to orchestrate the scenery. I will see you in most likely an hour, but in the blink of an eye in your time. Hello, welcome back to Sharon from Vivid Days. We're going to continue this tutorial. It has been a couple of days since I worked on the first leg, but I am back. So my acrylic paint has totally dried. When you're working with resin, it's important that you have it as level as possible. Now underneath here, I have my frame stood on the silicone, and I believe they are they like cake? Sorry. You can buy these silicone cake stands from Amazon. Let me just see if I can show you this. They uncouple together and they come flat like that. They are great if you're working with resin from an overspill point of view because it just pulls right off. So I will list those in my description. Please, as I've mentioned before, check my descriptions before asking questions about products because it will be there. So get your spirit level and pop it in multiple places. You want that as level as possible. So I can move my spirit level out of the way now. So here you can see I've got some little silicone cups. They again are from Amazon. They carry about 100 ml. They are forgiving as far as you can use them over and over again. I do have some, when I used art resin, that one never seemed to come off totally, but I have scrubbed them to make sure there's no bits going to come off. And I will use those. You leave the resin to cure in there and you can pull it out so it is more environmentally friendly. You are going to need some stirring sticks. Now these are plastic ones, but I use them over and over again. So as soon as I finish with them, I get an alcohol wipe it off, and they're good to go and use them again. You'll see me using this. This is just basically a kebab skew. It's got a nice little tip. It's quite long, and if you've got any bits of dust that go in there, you need to pull that up and flick that away. A lot of people have asked, what is this magic wand stirring stick that I'm using? It is basically just a silicone or plastic stirring stick. The holes mean nothing. It just came when I ordered a big bulk of Mastercast resin, and I wipe it down and I use it over and over again. So you will need a container big enough for you to stir. With this particular piece, I will not need more than, I would say, 300 ml of resin. I'm probably going to go slightly over that because I've got a couple that I need to add clear resin to off screen for a different project. And you can, to know how much resin you need, you can go online and use a resin calculator. You put in the length, oh my gosh, I can't speak, length and breadth that you need in inches or centimeters, and it will tell you what amount of resin it feels you need. So it's a good gauge, but as you're working with different resins, you'll realize it has a different consistency or volume, and you have to work out whether you need more or less. With such as this, you don't want to have too much left over because resin's expensive, so you want to use only what needed. However, if you're working on a project like this, there's nothing worse than finding you've just missed out on a little bit of resin that you need. Now underneath, as I mentioned before, I taped underneath. That's in case there are any spillages that come through this area here. I'm not envisaging much, but you might get a little bit of leakage, and this will need 2 layers. So another thing you will need is your heat gun and also a blowtorch. The blowtorch is very good at getting air bubbles out and bringing it to the top, and that helps give it a quick little coating. The heat gun is to break down the resin so that it warms up, becomes more watery, and will bleed into each other. But you have to be very mindful with both of them, and you should really use a respirator. Now, because I'm making an instructional video, I can't use my normal respirator, otherwise you wouldn't be able to hear me speaking. This is a low toxicity, and even though it is a low toxicity and low smell, it's still something you should get into the practice of using, because even though the manufacturers will say it's safe for indoors, remember it is plastic, and every time you start to heat it up, you're going to create fumes. So protect your lungs, and if you don't wear glasses, maybe wear glasses. Safety first. So I would recommend that you definitely invest in one of these. If not, especially if you're using dust particles or dust pigments, make sure you're also wearing a mask so you don't breathe in that fine powder. Because we're using acrylics, we're going to be okay, and only because I'm doing an instruction, you'll see my face is not wearing this, but please do wear one. Another thing you need to be mindful of is gloves. You don't want to touch resin with your hands. Now you will see a lot of resin artists double glove. So they'll put the main gloves that are comfortable on underneath and then put a slightly bigger one on the outer. That is because when you're first mixing it up and touching resin, you could get it all over your gloves, and it's far easier then just to pull that top glove off and have a pair of gloves underneath, because once you start getting sticky, it's very hard to put gloves on. So again, safety first. Where possible, make sure you're working in a well ventilated area and access to a fire extinguisher, because we are going to be using flames on chemicals. So I believe they're going to be the only essentials. Now my blowtorch is a little bit worse for wear, so I have to ignite it with this. So if you're working with resin for the first time, things do tend to get sticky, so think about that when you're handling things. The only reason I'm not swapping it out to my beautiful new one that my fella got me for Christmas is we're about to move into a new home, and I want to keep all my shiny goodness for in my new art space when I am in there. So the resin I am going to be using is epoxy resin, and it's resin 8. I will show you that now. There we go. So this is what we call epoxy resin 1:1. So you'll have 1 part resin, 1 part hardener. It's like for like. So if you're going to use 300 mils total fluid, you would do 150 mils of resin, 150 mil of hardener. But again, check your manufacturer's instructions. They will give you the guide. They will also give you the guide of how soon you can touch your resin or put that second layer on here. Now this one should take 2 coats. The first one here is going to be mapping out the colours, getting some of that depth, working on the composition that I've put here, creating a few waves, and then the second layer will be to add more depth and movement and get a little bit of that transparency coming through. So make sure you've got a measuring jug. I can't find one big enough that's silicone, but the one I use, once you up tip it, all the excess resin will run to the bottom, and then you can just pull it out and you are good to go and recycle as much as possible. Also take into consideration, how are you going to cover your resin? Because once we've got it on here, there are natural dust particles in the air. So there are some tips that you can spray the air with water before you start working. Just make sure it doesn't touch where the resin's going to be, because remember, resin hates water. You can also put a top lid on here. Now my partner made this for me. It's MDF. He made it as big as I needed it for working on. It's on a tall set of drawers, so that helps with my back problem. And I put a piece of timber over the top of this, which creates a, I want to say, little coffin for it, but it does help with that dust particles in there while it's curing. I keep baby wipes to hand, so I can wipe them down. Some people keep a towel that's got alcohol on there so they can wipe their hands, because it's a really great way of getting resin off your hands. So I'm going to bring you in closer, because I have created a composition of shells and stones and even a starfish. There is no rhyme or reason to this other than where you feel it is aesthetically pleasing for yourself. Now some people might think about composition, that if I've got a wave coming here, is the perspective correct? Or some people just want a feeling and it's fairly abstract, so it really doesn't matter. For me, I'm using stones, shells that I have collected from beaches I have been to and that have some connection to myself. These are from the same collection that I did for my mother-in-law, which is the video that seems to be doing quite well out there, hence the instructional video. You can use whatever colours, however you want it. You can have some going into the water, some not. The reason I've put them here is my clear will be lapping on here. So some of these, well, they're all going to submerge under resin, but some will look like the waves are lapping on them. Now the stones are all good to stay as they are. I'll apply my resin softly so that I'm not going to move them, but these particular ones will need to be dipped in the resin and pulled out because we want to remove any air bubbles and make sure that it's coated lovely in there. And you've got to work out, do things look better for you placed up or placed down? So I'll bring you in very closely with my camera so you can see my composition. I've had to put it this way because it's going to work better for me when I'm working, and although I'm showing you my process, I've still got to be able to work fairly freely. And then I will show you as I mix my resin with the acrylics and how much I put in and how I apply it, heat it up and blend it. And then another reminder is, remember, resin hates water. Acrylics are made from water-based paints. If you apply your resin and acrylics, it can create that chemical reaction. Now for these particular brands, I'm fine with it. I only apply as I use it. I've not had any reaction, but I have had quite a few people asking me, why is it theirs heating up dramatically? Why is it setting like concrete? It's just the different brands, and it depends on how much water they put it in with. So you can just use pigments, you can work with whatever you want, but just have fun, be true to yourself, and just connect with that feeling. Okay, I'm Sharon, I've digressed, but it's all the information people ask me about, so I'm going to get on with this now, and I'll talk out loud as I'm going, but I think I've just bombarded you with a lot of information. And I am working in night time now, so I'm hoping that the colours are good for you. So I'm going to glove up, and then I'll see you as we start mixing. Okay, so I've mixed my resin, 200ml hardener, 200ml resin. Now you'll see, you may or may not see, but you'll see that the streaks through there, that shows you where the resin and the hardener hasn't mixed. The reason I didn't put it on top of here to mix is, if you ever get pools of resin or hardener that's separated and not together, you'll end up with dimples that are gooey and won't become hard. So it's important that you take the time. It's not about the speed of how you use it, but it's about scraping around and making sure you go everywhere. And it takes 2 to 3 minutes for this particular resin to mix. I'm just going to set my timer. Hey Siri, set timer for 3 minutes.
Okay, 3 minutes and counting.
So all I am going to do now is stir for 3 minutes. I will fast forward through this, but I wanted to show you that this is the speed I go at, and I scrape around the edges and I bring it up and down and I'm mixing, but I'm trying not to put too many bubbles in there. They will come out with the heat, but the less bubbles you've got in there, the better it is. So I will see you on the other side of my 3 minute timer, and I'll show you how I start to add my sand. Okay, so my 3 minute timer's gone. I'm looking through to make sure I can see no stringy bits, and that resin is looking clear and mixed in, and it is. So I stirred it for 3 minutes. It recommends 2 to 3 minutes. Sometimes you can tell because it just gets easier. It gets more fluidy and you can feel that chemicals all mixed in. So before I start adding it, I'm going to show you my stones. Okay, so this is it from my perspective. I've got my resin there. I've got my glitter that I'm going to add a tiny little bit across the ocean bottom. That's an added extra. You don't have to do that. But how I have done my composition is, I wanted some of the stones to the back area there. I've just sort of placed them down, let them do their own thing, and scattered a few shells around. And I'm now going to come in and add clear, and I'll probably add clear up to about here and put sand in here to just help with that texture and that feeling of natural. And then I'll come and start my way back here, and I just have to be cautious that I don't put too much blue here because I don't want that all bleeding and covering the sand up yet. And when I come in on the second layer, I'll do some more clear, so it's almost crystal clear here, but a tinge of blue and lapping over here. So that, I think, is what added to the beauty of the other one. So we are going to get on with mixing these and having a go. So I'll put you back and I'll show you the process. So to start with, just making sure there's no bits in there. Wow, dust gets in here so quickly. Oh, my starfish is running away from me. Alright, so a tiny little bit of glitter. The reason I choose to add a little bit of glitter, that's quite a a bit there actually, blow that around, is because the resin's going to cover it but a shimmer will come through. Now on the first layer it's okay, but the resin will, the glitter will float to the top, so if you're using your blowtorch it can set it afire and make it brown, so you just have to be careful with it. I'm just going to spread it with my hands because I just want a tiny little bit of sparkle. I don't want a big clump. I'm going to put a tiny little bit down there, but I think I might add that part in with the sand. Actually no, I'm just going to add a little bit more. And the reason I do it as well is just when the light catches it, you just get a nice little glimpse as you're walking past it. That's it. So now I am going to apply my resin into this area here very gently, trying not to move the stones, but I also don't want to put it too thick, so I've got to keep, I said I was going to dump these, didn't I? So let me just dump them. Just make sure that's got a nice coating and position it. That'll help get rid of any air bubbles. This is where resin is beautiful but sticky. Just want to make sure you've got enough to get everywhere. Now as you heat resin up it will keep moving, so you might think, oh, I've got plenty here, or should I say I've used this quite sparingly, but then as you heat it up it's going to spread, so always with caution. So I'm just going to let that settle a little bit, filling any gaps with my fingers. I'm looking for any obvious holes or places where the resin's not going, and I'm just going to help it along its way. But the minute you do, it is self-leveling, so it will sort itself out, and when you heat it will, but you just need to make sure from a surface point of view you're helping it along. Now some people coat their stones, I would imagine, or pebbles before they pour them on. I just like to work on my composition and then try and control that, but it's whatever's going to work best for you, whatever's going to feel right for you. And as I add colour here, it will bleed into the clear one. So I am going to get my sand. Now I use real sand. The sand comes from a hobby shop. I think it might be useful when people, I don't know, work on trains. So I keep it in an airtight tub just so there's no bits in there, and I have a little spoon, and I am just going to shuffle it backwards and forwards. Now it will sink some of it and it will cover some of the stones, and I am not too fazed by that because that's just going to make it look like a washed up beach. But I am trying to make sure I don't cover my starfish too much. You'll start to see it's going to get quite wet looking, but to me I just like to do it this way. I mean, you could put the sand down and then add the stones, but for me I want it to look like some of them are buried under the stand, and that just works for me. I rotate the direction I'm doing it, again, just because I don't want it to look like it's all just so neat. I want it to look fairly messed up and movement and all that jazz. Now they might get to a point where there could be too much sand, and if that's the case you have to apply more resin to absorb it. Okay, I'm going to leave that for this layer. I shouldn't need to add any more, but we'll come back at the end and we'll see. Right, this is where we get to the fun part of the colours. and then we will torch it all at the same time. I just want a little bit more resin in the corners there. Make sure all my satin does get covered up. Alright, so I'm going to start with my blue to start with. You're just going to make sure that you may want to measure it out, because you want to make sure that you're not going to forget a colour. See me counting them out in my head, thinking, okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then white. So I'm not going to need as much white. You need very little white compared to the rest. A little bit of white goes a long way, and this is just going to be the undertones to the wave or the movement underneath. So that's something else I keep in mind. And I'm probably going to need 2, because I've got 3 lighter colours towards the front. I'm probably going to need more for the black, for the ultramarine and the cerulean blue, because I've got 3 of the other colours that are going to blend through, but we shall see. And you'll also see me tip my cup upside down, and the reason I do that is to get as much of this resin out of here as possible. And remember, it's your first layer, you're not going for perfection, but you are going for the tones that you're going to be using. So I'm just going to leave that upside down now. That can add to the effects. And what I'm going to do is wipe down my red stirring stick now, because then it's easy to wipe off. I do it with my baby wipes. You can do it with alcohol wipes, whatever works best for you. And then that'll be good to go for next time, because resin is sticky. So if you don't stay organised as you go, you're going to get in a mess. That's all I can say. My gloves on. All right, so let's start with the ultramarine. So no more than 10% when it comes to acrylics. Now I tend to put about a pea size, pop it in and stir it, and it mixes in beautifully very well. If you start to get that marshmallow effect, you know that you have applied too much. But again, you don't want it to be too solid, because you do want to capture some of that base we've put in, some of the glitter. And as we put the next layer on, we will go slightly more transparent so that that follows through. Okay, so that one is looking good. It's looking well mixed in. Wipe the excess off your stick. Make sure it doesn't drip anywhere, and then we should be able to put that somewhere and clean it. But time. Oh, so the reason I drag some through a little bit here is just to help with some of that blending of the tones and give that sense of movement. But a little bit left in your resin cup goes a long way, so you keep your spatula. And I'm just going to feed that into the edges and the corner, because that's probably where you're going to have most resistance. And then I usually come in with my fingers then and just push it to where it needs to be. Try not to get too much up the sides, but again, it doesn't matter, because we will be coming back with more layers and it will self-level. but just to make sure you are capturing in those areas as possible. And don't be afraid to move it around, put it where you need it. It's very hard when you're doing videos because you have to put the work so that you can see it, obviously, because that's what this video's for. But it doesn't make it the best experience for the artist when working on it, because you've got natural places. You would prefer your hand to go to get into all the nooks and crannies. So you may or may not be able to see, but there are plenty of air bubbles there. And not too stressed. Like I said before, I'm going to come back in. And that has got as much out of that as you can. So I will leave this to dry upside down on a silicone mat I've got, and what that will mean is that when it's cured in 24 hours time, I can just peel it out, then wash it with soapy water, and I will be good to go to use those again. All right, we are coming through now with the cerulean blue, about the same amount again. A pea-size lump, so I'm going to move these out of the way as I go. Trying to work tidy. Now this one does go slightly on the edge of marshmallowy, so you do have to apply this quickly and spread it out. Once it's on there, it will be absolutely fine, but it's just the one I know has a more reaction than any of the other ends. So we will bring back down. And then again, I will just pull a few of the colours through, but we'll try and keep most of this colour now up here at the edges and a little bit down here, bleeding into that ultramarine. And as I heat this up, this will go further down. You've always got to take that into consideration. So we're on track, but it is going to be a bit hit and miss if I've left enough from a colour point of view down this way. But we still have white to add for the waves and the colours here. Put the excess resin. So this is where I'm going to come in with the green blue. Get rid of my excess glob from around the nozzle. Now different piece size. It's got a beautiful shimmer. Yeah, that one. It's got that pearlescent blue coming through there, but definitely a green. It's beautiful. Now these ones are a bit more transparent or translucent, so you might find that you do need more of the pigments to these, but you know, I'm happy with this. So I'm going to bring some of the green back through here. But try and make sure I capture the rest at the front. Don't think it gets much depth on the first layer myself. Second layer, absolutely. So I'll come down here where okay, 1, 2, the final two colours in the white, but I'm just going to bring that to the edge. Now going on to the blue-green. Oh, again, I've got all my glob on there. Down there. Pea size. Beautiful shimmer. Pea bows are beautiful, I think, for waters. Don't want to bring some through. Okay, scrape the excess. Bring it down the sides again because that's where we need most of it. And this is where the blue is starting to hit the clear, so you will see that the pigments will filter through to the colours, which is not an issue, but you do have that to have left yourself that bit of buffer zone and space as it starts to mix with the clear. So if I was to add too much colour here, it would probably go quite far down. So as you get to work with resin, you'll understand that. If you do work with resin, you know what I'm talking about. If not, it's just going to be a matter of trial and error, I'm afraid. I can't tell you how far away to leave it. You're just going to see how the pigments are going to work with the clear. Very last one, which is the turquoise. This one gives that beautiful colour when you just add a tiny little bit in there. Oh, gotta be careful now because I've got that stuck on my glove. So another pea size. Let's get more of that turquoise colour. Yeah, should do because it's called turquoise. Alright, so I do need the biggest part of it to be here, in this central part, but I am going to just drag some through again, creating that movement. So I think what I'm going to do is just check that there's no obvious gaps. Again, it doesn't matter if it's light with resin in some areas because I'm going to heat it, it's going to move it, but I'm just going to make sure there's no obvious gaps, make them connect. I'm going to get rid of my air bubbles, and then I'm going to add my white for the waves, and then that should be this part done. And the only thing I've got to assess is, am I going to put any more sand on at this stage? But I don't want to do that until I see what is going to happen with this resin. So let me come back and have a go at that. Let's see if I can get this to light now. Okay, here we go. Just be careful not to hold it directly onto the resin. You always hold it at an angle. You should be able to see some of these air bubbles popping, and you've got to keep it moving because you do not want to burn your resin. You do not want to burn the wood, but you do want to make sure you're getting as many of these bubbles out as possible, otherwise they are going to rise to the top and they are going to leave holes within your resin. So sometimes you have to come back and do multiple swipes. Remember, this was on the MDF, so because it's porous, it is going to create quite a few bubbles. Now, it's not disastrous on your very first layer if you've got lots of bubbles left. However, on your very last coat it is, otherwise it's going to look a mess. Now, when I apply the white, I am going to use the blowtorch. No, the heat gun. I'm using the blowtorch now, and that will get rid of some of the bubbles as well. But I'm just doing my hardest at the minute just to get rid of as many excess bubbles as possible. This is a very quick curing resin, but I'm just mindful, always keep it moving. And I think I'm going to get my nail to top up this gun. Alright, let's have some fun and add the waves and blend this all together. Neil, would you mind just filling up my gun? I think both of them.
Both of them?
Yeah.
Wow.
Would you like a...
Instead of me there.
Oh! Oh! I didn't even think about that. Oh, fuck. You've not burnt yourself, have you? Alright, casting craft, you only need a little bit of this in your resin. I think it creates beautiful feathering and effects for, thank you sweetheart, for waves in the ocean, but you may have your own personal preference and that's okay. Works for me. And that was recommended by Artist Till Death, the beautiful Erica, so I've stuck with that and that really does work. But work on what works for you. Work, work, work. I work, work, work for you. There you go. That's all just blended in. Quite a few air bubbles. Yeah, first layer. Let's see. Ooh. So I come quite a bit.
Empty.
Oh, we are. Oh, we need to get more.
The other one's charged now.
Okay. So I will have to most likely start quite far back like I am, because I don't believe, well, what am I trying to say? I know that this is going to creep forward and go in here, so I'm adding a little bit of caution to where I'm going and just using my imagination. It's up to you how many imaginary waves or lapping you want. Again, that's part of the fun, creating your own beach. Sorry, I've just seen some down the side there, so I just want to get that. Resin's not as forgiving to get off as the wooden frame. And then to me, there'll be just a little bit here that'll interact with the shells and sea creatures. So you do want a little bit of lace in here, not too much because we are going to come back. But I always think they're going to be stuck on the stones. There's going to be a little bit of foam around some of them, but again, that's just down to imagination. But I think the biggest wave is going to come from here, the front area where it's hitting that shore. Oh, leave that as it is just for now and see what's going to happen when I add my heat gun. So this is going to get noisy. If you have sensitive ears, be careful. I've got a beautiful new one to use when I move into my new space, but at the minute this is just my old one, a standard one, low and high heat. So to start with, I always go around the piece on heat, on low, just keeping it moving, trying to just warm the resin up before we come in here and start to put it on the high heat and force it around a little bit. Don't forget your sand area. Alright, so we're going to go back to the top now and have a go. So I am loving this piece, loving this, enjoying that, and I need some more foam here. So it's a good time to stop anyway, because you need to let the resin cool down. If you start to see it smoking or smouldering, stop. I can see a little bit of dust in there, but not too worried, I'll come back. So I'm going to gently come back and add some more foam here, because in theory that's where it is doing most of the lapping. So let's do that now. So just saying like that, so just getting rid of that. So I really can only come in with one more blast of the heat gun here, otherwise I'm going to lose everything. So just make sure I've got it right. I'm just going to come in with let's have a look at this, Sharon. So I'm going to try and not heat this part up because I want that to set. I will have to come back with more bubbles popping. I'm just going to concentrate on this part here. So just heat up this part, that's where I want movement, and just be cautious. All right, here we go. You see the resin pop back together and it'll sort itself out, and I think that's a good first base composition. Look for anything obvious like globs of resin on your frame, clear that off. Look for any obvious gaps where the resin's not touching where it should be, and I am just going to pop some bubbles and say that this one is a winner chicken dinner. Okay, so just bringing you in for a close-up. You might or might not be able to see slight dust on there, so I use this here. I'm just a bit cautious though because this is setting now, so, and I'm just pushing the dust particles under. You have to do this in a timely manner though, otherwise you will create more bubbles in your work. Hello, welcome back to Sharon from Vivid Days. It is raining, so I'm hoping that you can still hear me talking over this. It's just gentle, but I actually quite like that. So this has cured. It's been waiting over 12 hours. The particular resin I'm using is just a 24-hour curing. I am just going to bring you in and show you the results. So I thought I might get away with not doing a second coat, but as it's all settled and dried, you can see here where it's gone through a little bit clear to the paint under here. So I'll do my best to show you. So happy with the sand and the stones. I quite like the fact that they look underwater, so I am going to come back through and do a second coat because here I'm not quite happy where you can see that coming through. Here, do love it, but what you will find is this next layer, it'll be thinner, it'll be a little bit more transparent, so you will still see this coming through, but it's also going to create that little sense of movement again. And I'm very happy with the first coat, but let's come in and let me show you how we do the second coat. But let's have a look if we had any spillage. We never did, no leakage, because you would see resin coming out of here. So it's been quite a controlled board again, and I am going to just make sure when I put it back down, do the same things, which is make sure it is all level, make sure it's as dust free as possible. I'm going to clean out my cups and we're going to do the process again. This time I'll maybe fast forward this process. I'll see how I feel because it is just a repeat of the other one, but it is a thinner amount of acrylic paint going in there, so it'll be more transparent. I'm going to try and stay true to the first image because I love it, but I do just need to add a little bit more of the foam and lapping onto it here. So this is where your fingers crossed, because you don't want to absolutely ruin this, but at the same time it needs to be complete, and that's your choice as an artist, whether you're willing to stop here or whether you're willing to go to that next level. But yep, I'll bring you along on this ride with me and let's see how this goes. So you may ask or be thinking, do I need to sand this down? Well, no, because it's only been 12 hours since I last did this. You don't need to sand it down before you put the next layer, because the resin should grip to it. If you've been waiting multiple days, a week, I'd definitely sand it back to give it something to grip to. But this is one of the things that I was showing you or talking about, that you just pull your resin out of there and off of here, and you can reuse them again. I didn't mean to leave the sticks in. Normally I take the sticks out, so I will just pull off these bits here, turn them inside out, and then you can reuse them again. Okay, so these have all been cleaned with a little bit of elbow grease and also a little bit of detergent. So you put them inside out, peel it, and then I run them in soapy water and basically scrub them out, so they come out fairly clean. I'm just making sure there's no excess water left in there, because the mantra of this video is resin hates water. So I am just setting up my space again. I'm going to come back with spirit level and get this rodeo working again. Now, in theory, this spirit level should be right, but I always double check and triple check, because there's no going back once you've committed. Alright, we are good to go. Bring my paints back that we're going to be using. Ultramarine. Oh, just hurt my toe. That's not good. Is it really, ow. Turquoise, green blue, blue green, and my casting craft white. I need stirring sticks for all of these, so I'm going to go with a thinner stirring stick now, because I'm not really going to need a huge amount. So I need, get rid of that dirt. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 1 to stir my resin. So I am going to go for only 300 mils of resin this time, so that's a reduced, and I'm going to consider if I come in and add some of my crystal gems for embellishment. Sometimes they can add a nice little effect towards the front here. Personal choice, whatever you're feeling, just go with it. Stand by your art, that's what I say. So many people are quick to comment and give their opinions, but you are the creator and you are in charge of your art destiny, as long as the resin wants you to do it. Alright, so no more glitter this time. And make sure I've got excess dust off that may have just come while I've been out of the room. Yep, it gets around that easily. Best to spend time doing it now. You don't want it floating to the top or irritating you in that. So I'm going to get my blow torches handy. My heat gun turned on. And then we are going to mix our resin again. And this is where you are going to be fast forward unless I'm going to be saying anything. Okay, this piece is done, and I'm really happy with this. You're not really going to get full perspective until it's cured, but I need to get the lid on, so I'll just show you briefly. That's from the angle you were looking at, but if we come in now to the bottom left corner, and we'll bring it down, the resin will keep moving a little bit and curing, but I think it's safe to say there is a lot of movement there, which is good. The sense of crashing. This part here, I'm noticing there's a it creates craziness there rather than it being just all straight. Sorry, you're not seeing what I'm doing there. A sense of movement in it. Oh. It's just a personal choice. You might not want to do it, but good morning, everybody. This is fully cured, and I'm going to bring it in to show you this, and I'll also stand it upright so you can see it. So I'm so happy with this. I'm going to do a little flyover, so hopefully this don't give you any morning sickness, and then we'll come and look a bit more detailed. I love the movements. I love the tones. I've said that all the way along. This second coat definitely added value and covered up that area that concerned me. What you would look at as an artist now is, if you're going to sell this or keep it for yourself, what is your dust particles like? Do you have any imperfections? And all I would recommend is sometimes before you sell, you might need to give it a very light coating of resin to cover up any imperfections or dust. So on this, I'll show you if I can get it in the light. There, this area here, let me check, that's where my finger is. My resin and heat gun may have been a bit too close, so there's a slight little speckling effect here. I mean, it is still flat. It could be the pigments. It's not detracting from it, but it's just one thing I noticed when I look close. So that's when you would decide whether you wanted to just give it one more coat. So let's go in for a closer look now, and we'll start at the bottom right. I'll try and zoom in for you a little bit. And there'll be parts on here that you might like. There'll be parts that you wouldn't put in there. Now these are the little glass sort of table decorations I added. Now I've added those just, for me, it adds a little bit more feature, but also it reminds me a little bit of jellyfishes that we would get a lot in Australia. And I do love, turn you around a little bit, the motions of the foam coming in over it all. And also a starfish peeping through there. This is the part that you saw me at the end where I came in and just added little bits of swirls. Oh, there we go. Because I just didn't want it to be all straight. Don't know why. It was just a personal choice. But as we come through, I'm hoping that you'll be able to see the waves that were created underneath on the first layer, just subtly. Also those different colours blending through. Overall, very happy project, and I hope that you will be able to create something. So I do apologise because you are going to get to see me a little bit reflection in here. I'll zoom back out. There we go. But when it's stood up, this is the perspective that you get to see as well. So I think this is one happy piece. So remember, if you like this tutorial video and step-by-step guide to my process, thumbs up, subscribe, share. Comments are always welcome. And if you found that this helped you, I would love to know what were the results of your own creations. Remember, you'll never create something replica because it's unique to you and it's fluid art, so it will always do what it wants to do. All you can try and do is work on it or work with it. But I would love to know how you have gone. I think I saw a little bit of dust there. Could be just off legs, I'll check in. But be original to yourself, have some fun, be willing to fail and learn. And if you would like more longer videos like this that are very instructional and step-by-step guide, let me know, because everybody wants different things from you. Some people want them very quick and speeded up. and just get to there putting the colour on. Some people have never used it before or want more detail, so it's always a fine balance. So I'll try and, if people want, a few more of these out and mix in with a few quicker pieces. But I think this has been an amazing project. Thank you so much for choosing to spend your time with me, and I hope that it added value to your creative side. So I'm digressing. I'm Sharon. I'll see you on the next video. Bye.